The story behind one of our most popular shrubs, that's the subject of today's video. Hello, I'm David Wilson here at Overdivest Nurseries on a beautiful spring afternoon. We're getting ready to send out some of our plants to our partnering garden centres that are located all over the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. And what I thought today is I would give you a little bit of background information about what has become one of our signature plants. This is, if you don't already recognize it, Weigela My Monet, a really fantastic little dwarf shrub. First of all, this is a very hardy plant, zone 4, so it'll grow anywhere in our region. Also, it's small and compact, only growing about 12-18 inches high. So it will fit in even the smallest sites. Or of course you could use it on a larger ground covering situation where perhaps you would have drifts of them, kind of like the way they're set out here on this wagon. You would put them in at about 2.5 to say 3 foot centers, and eventually they will make a cover of this beautiful variegated foliage that's always changing through the season. And as you see now on the older growth, they're producing lots of these beautiful little pink trumpet-shaped flowers that butterflies and hummingbirds love to come and visit. Before I forget to tell you, I should say that it's really not very difficult to grow either. In fact, all it wants is an average garden soil. As long as it's free draining, you'll find that these will settle in and establish and do very well. And the other thing that's really important in this region, and that is that normally deer don't bother browsing with them either. Now, in many ways, it's a plant that's very appropriately named, because just like the famous artist Claude Monet was studying and representing the effects of light in his famous garden at Giverny in France during the seasons from early season right through to the latter part of it, and of course also at different times of the day, so this plant also changes according to where you might have it in the garden and the time of year as well. For instance, if it's out in a sunny spot, you're going to see it taking on deeper and darker centers to the leaves. Whereas if it's in a shadier spot, you'll see it taking on more of this creamy white edge to the variegation. And that changes through the season as well. From spring, when the young foliage emerges first, you will see it taking on a lighter appearance, and then as we get into the intensity of light during the summertime, you'll see it darken. So as you watch it in different places around the garden, you too will be able to enjoy the different effects of light, just like Claude Monet did. And as you can see by the tags and the white pot here, this is a selection that's been introduced by proven winners. It's one that turned up as a sport in Boskoop in the Netherlands, which is the nursery production area there. They send plants out all over Europe. A nurseryman there, Bert Verhoef, was growing a variety called Tango. It's a purple, kind of dark-leafed plant, and he noticed one day in 2001 that there was a shoot that had this variegation on it, what we call a sport. Well, of course he noticed it, grew it on, and it is from that now probably hundreds of thousands of plants are grown all over the world. But I want to take you back even further than that. You see, Weigela are native to the Far East, to China, Japan and Korea. And in 1844, the famous Scottish plant hunter Robert Fortune, the man who smuggled tea plants out of China and broke their monopoly on tea, was visiting the garden of a mandarin. And it was there that he seen the first of that new plant at that time to science. What he didn't know is that the Chinese have been cultivating it there for centuries. Anyway, he collected it and sent it back to the West. And then as nurserymen and botanists and hybridists begin to develop, they started to select out some varieties. And as a young student many years ago, I remember learning the names of some of the varieties and hybrids that were popular at that time. Ones like Bristol Ruby, a very nice red flowered one, and Mont Blanc was a white one. They were fine, but rather big and a bit coarse, didn't really flower as much as the modern hybrids that we get today, and were in many ways a bit uninteresting, but they were tough and hardy and reliable and easy to grow, and at that time really quite popular. Now, as their popularity grew, other people in colder parts of the world were interested in possibly growing them too. And that's when a Scottish-born man called Frank Skinner, who had a nursery, or really a farm, at Dropmore in Manitoba, became interested. Now, I should mention that he was really an incredibly interesting person, self-taught, very knowledgeable, and over his career developed and introduced over 300 different selections that were able to grow in the colder parts of Canada and elsewhere in the world too. So anyway, he managed to get hold of some seed from Manchuria, way up in the northeastern part of China, cold, frigid winter conditions. And from that seed, he developed a selection called Dropmore Pink. Very nice, really. Grew about 4 to 6 foot high and was free flowering with pretty pink flowers. And then another Canadian, well, actually somebody who was born in Vienna, Austria, and emigrated to Canada in 1953, Dr. Felicitas Sueda, started to get interested in possibly hybridizing and creating short, compact, free-flowering varieties that were able to cope with the colder areas within Canada. And she was a very gifted, talented person who at one point became recognized as probably one of the foremost authorities in the world on hybridization. And certainly she became famous for her development of the Explorer series of roses, which meant that they could be grown in the colder parts of Canada. Well, she started to work with Skinner's Dropmore Pink, and she crossed that with a little short purple leaf form that I used to grow years ago in the UK, one called Phallus purpurea, looking to get the hardiness of the Dropmore Pink, but the compact habit of Phallus purpurea. And during the 1980s, she introduced what became known as the dance series, ones like Minuet and Polka and Samba, and another one called Tango. And it was from that selection that then, when Bert Verhoef, which takes me right round to the end of the story, that he was growing, that then he found the sport that led to this fabulous variety. So today we have a compact, tidy, hardy, easy to grow little plant that can be used in a wide variety of situations, including edging alongside paths or driveways, or just growing in a little bed somewhere in a courtyard, or perhaps even in a container. As you can see, these really are very special plants with, I hope you think also, an interesting background story, and I hope ones that you're going to be able to enjoy growing in your garden too. This is David Wilson. Enjoy your gardening. It's good for us, and it's very good for our environment as well.